Today on Inside Utah Politics, food insecurity. School is out for the summer, but childhood hunger continues. We're looking into the options available to keep food on the table for those who otherwise may go without. Plus, a bipartisan group of senators rolling out a compromise on gun control. But will it work? Both sides are weighing in.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with Alex Cragen. He is with Utahns Against Hunger, here to discuss food insecurity needs during the summer months. Alex, always great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me.
Food insecurity may not be on the minds of many people right now as we head into the summer, but it really is just as important now as it is any time of the year. Paint that picture for us. Give us a state of food insecurity as we speak.
Yeah, so with schools closing, families often have to find, babysitters, childcare, or having to reduce their hours in order to cover those time periods. And so what we see is an increase in food insecurity here in Utah, and we've seen that in increases in demand from community food pantries, increases in people applying for programs like SNAP and other things. And so, there are a variety of ways to sort of address that. One is the Summer Food Program, which is a federally funded but state-administered program that provides meals to children and teens across the state of Utah.
Yeah, talk to us about how that works and what it is.
Yeah, so it's available to any child under the age of 18 who is looking for a meal. There are roughly about 250 sites across the state that provide meals to children. They operate, some provide breakfast, most provide lunch, some provide supper. But it's an incredibly impactful program. When looking at child hunger in particular, summer months often see an increase in food insecurity as well as a decrease in terms of consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. And the Summer Food Program is a great way to mitigate that sort of impact during the summer months.
If you could, Alex, let's talk a little bit about the need for that, because it's really heartbreaking to think that a child may not know where the next meal is going to come from. That's not something a child should have to be worrying about at this point in life. What impact does it have on a child in all aspects of life when they question where the next meal is?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, when you look at the studies in terms of the short-term impacts, that there's issues around mental health, behavioral health, as well as just general overall health, increases in asthma and other chronic conditions. In the long term, food insecurity as a child has lasting effects on adults as well. And so being able to provide these meals not only address short-term needs and short-term health outcomes, but their long-term growth and success as individuals.
Okay, so you talked about multiple locations available for this summer food program. How can someone learn more about where those locations are and other important things when it comes to the program?
Well, first, I'd highly recommend to go to Utahns Against Hunger's website, uah.org. We have a listing for summer food sites based on school districts. You can also go to your school district's website. There will be information about the Summer Foods Program there. And then also the USDA has a website where you can go and, based on your zip code, find the nearest summer meals site in your area.
Let's look forward now, if we can, Alex. Talk about anything that's upcoming that can help address this issue as well.
Yeah, so there are two things that are tied together. One, at least on the federal level, is the Summer EVT program. This is something that is a possibility that will be looked at as part of child nutrition reauthorization that will happen later this year. The Summer EVT program operates similar to SNAP in that it provides $30 to $60 per child in a household that's of school age. They did a pilot project last year and saw some significant mitigations when it came to food insecurity amongst children based on that pilot project. The second one is some rule changes with regards to the summer meals program, making it easier for sites to operate and provide some additional flexibilities there. On the state level, in July, we'll see the rollout of SB 133, which established the Food Security Council. That will have some appointments, and then from there, that group will be working together to establish and align some priorities to reduce food insecurity here in Utah.
Yeah, that was a big bill that we were following. I know you were as well. Talk to us about the end goal there. What will this commission ultimately do?
Yeah, so the goal is to align priorities when it comes to community outreach. So making sure that when people are doing outreach around the WIC program or the SNAP program, or folks are going to a food pantry, that they're able to get as much information as they can, and that they're able to apply without having to go through as many hoops. Other things could be looking at state policies and ways to sort of increase access to these programs. There are a number of options that states can take to increase access to things like SNAP. And it's our hope that we can work along with them to encourage them to provide some solid policy recommendations for either this legislative session that's coming up or the following one, to make some actions to make some lasting changes and improve the lives of low-income, food-insecure Utahns.
You and your organization do a lot of behind-the-scenes work in this area. Tell us a little bit more about Utahns Against Hunger and what it is you do exactly.
Yeah, so our mission is to increase access to food in the state of Utah. We do that through advocacy, so we work with our federal delegation and state elected officials on issues around food access and food insecurity. We do outreach. I manage a SNAP outreach partnership program where we provide a reimbursement to organizations that provide application assistance to SNAP families. Anyways. And then finally, education. We go and we talk to community organizations, members of the public, colleges about food access and food insecurities and ways that we can address them in a preventative manner.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. Someone in the community, obviously a very important partner for you in the work that you do. Someone that's watching, that's interested in maybe how they can help, what are your suggestions?
One, you can go to uah.org. We've got a number of opportunities there to sort of sign up to be part of our action newsletter. There's a lot of things coming up as part of the Farm Bill reauthorization next year. There's always something going on the state or local level. And then finally, I would also encourage anyone who is food insecure or knows someone who is food insecure, you can apply for SNAP benefits at jobs.utah.gov/mycase. And then with the coming of back to school in August, you can apply for free reduced price meals at your school district website.
Okay, and how important is it to have these relationships with the community and volunteers in the work that you do?
Oh, it's absolutely vital. We do a stakeholders meetings tour across the state every year. This summer, we plan on doing 9 stops in the community, talking to community food pantries, elected officials, folks that work in child nutrition departments at school districts, to talk about things like, where is the state of things when it comes to food access and food insecurity in that community, and how can we address those on the local level, whether that be making minor changes in terms of how things are accessed or hours, or whether that's a state level policy change as well.
And you already alluded to this quite a bit, but working with state lawmakers and other local elected officials, another important thing that community members can get involved in.
Oh, absolutely. And we highly recommend, we've got some great talking points on our website. If you're interested in sort of engaging with your state elected officials, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to get you trained up so you know how to address these issues and speak more to it.
All right, you do great work. I know we as a station like to volunteer at the food bank when we can. It's a good time to get out there and really make a difference in the community and to see the need out there. It is really great. Alex, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Still to come, a bipartisan gun control agreement working its way through the U.S. Senate. Will it cut down on gun violence in our country? That's the big question. Our panel debates that a little bit later. But first, the House Oversight Committee narrowing in on a company that made millions to review COVID relief applications. What's raising red flags? We'll get to that after the break. Welcome back. The latest announcement on a bipartisan gun reform bill has lawmakers weighing in on whether it's enough. Washington correspondent Basil John reports on what this legislation will mean if it can get passed.
The bill in and of itself is going to save thousands of lives. I have no doubt about that.
House leaders say they are encouraged by an announced deal to pass a gun safety bill in the Senate.
We look forward to the text.
New York Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries says it is good to see the Senate produce a bipartisan framework.
Doing something to address the gun violence crisis.
The proposed legislation provides funds to improve mental health programs and school safety, something California Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar believes is essential.
That's what the House Democratic Caucus is concerned about. Will this save lives of young people who are affected by gun violence?
Republican lawmakers are also welcoming the framework, but emphasize they need to see the final version before providing their support.
So I want to make sure that, red flag and all this stuff doesn't step on the Second Amendment. So I got to see what they want.
Texas Republican Congressman Roger Williams and Louisiana Republican Congressman Steve Scalise believe the framework is already better than ideas offered only by Democrats.
Speaker Pelosi's approach has been to make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get guns. President Biden even talked about taking handguns away from people, so that's not the answer.
Lawmakers emphasize that even though this framework doesn't address all concerns, some action is better than nothing. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
A House Oversight Committee report reveals that the Small Business Association failed to review loan applications at the start of the pandemic. That committee says many of the approved loans had signs of fraud that the Trump administration failed to detect. Washington correspondent Anna Warnicki with the latest.
South Carolina Democrat Jim Clyburn says billions in taxpayer dollars was stolen from Americans who needed it the most.
Criminals and criminal organizations took advantage of Americans suffering during this crisis.
Clyburn says an investigation by the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis found that hundreds of billions of dollars meant to help small businesses went to criminals instead.
The Trump administration contributed to this problem by failing to put basic fraud controls in place.
Clyburn says the report shows the company the Trump administration paid millions to review relief applications failed to perform its duties.
Louisiana Republican Congressman Steve Scalise defended the Trump administration for reacting quickly to an unprecedented time.
Democrats have continued their effort to undermine the PPP's success by attacking the Trump administration and financial institutions involved in the program.
In March, the Biden administration appointed Kevin Chambers to direct COVID-19 fraud enforcement. Now he says nearly 1,500 people are facing prosecution.
These cases, most of which are still in progress, have involved over $1.1 billion in losses.
But Chambers says more needs to be done, and President Biden is asking Congress for additional funding.
These resources will speed our data analysis and our identification of fraudulent schemes.
In Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
Coming up, the January 6th Commission laying it all out in public hearings. Our panel weighs in after the break.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former State Representative Patrice Arent and State Auditor John Dougal. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. Let's start off with the bipartisan Senate gun agreement. I want to start off with the process. Senator Murphy out of Connecticut, Chris Murphy out of Connecticut, really kind of taking the lead here. And he was very vocal in saying, look, I'm not getting everything I want, but at least I'm getting some, and that's good. Patrice, let's start with you. Your assessment of how this all came together.
I'm really pleased with how it came together. It's bipartisan. There's some meaningful proposals. I'd like to really thank our Senator Mitt Romney for being involved in the process and bringing compromise. It's not everything I'd want, but I really appreciate the process, and I'm hoping this will lead to further bipartisan agreements.
John, your thoughts on this bipartisan group coming together and hashing this out?
Well, if you want to see something at the congressional level done, I think they went through a good process. Clearly, from my perspective, I don't think this is really a federal issue. I don't think the federal government needs to weigh in. I think states are perfectly capable of addressing gun violence and the various issues that are associated with it.
Dig into that a little more. Why do you think states are better equipped to do that?
Well, even in the agreement, you see indications of this. When it comes to the discussion of red flag laws, they admit readily the federal courts aren't well suited for those, and they're relying on states and state courts to take care of it. But when you start looking through in terms of background checks, age requirements, other things like that, I think the states are perfectly well positioned. You've already seen New York State start to take some action from their perspective that their constituents think are good policy. And I don't think we have to have the federal government or Congress race in every time there's an issue in the nation. It's not a congressional problem.
Patrice, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Is this something that should be done at a federal level, or do you think the state is better equipped as well?
I think the feds need to come in and do something here. I mean, certainly there are issues that need to be handled on the state level, and we've tried to handle them. But some of it's just not going to happen, and people do cross lines. People buy guns in one state, take them to another state. I think there needs to be some uniformity. I wish we could have more, but I think we will see red flag laws, as John has talked about, done on a state level, and we almost got it done here, but we have not.
Okay, let's move to that now. Let's take a look at some of these proposals that are included. They include funding for school safety and mental health resources, those enhanced review periods for under 21 that you alluded to, John, and then encouraging states to pass red flag laws as well. From an effective standpoint, John, do you see that making a difference in what we're seeing happening across our country?
Well, I think first of all, when it comes to red flag laws, I think for a lot of folks, you admit there are certain circumstances where the courts and public safety needs to step in and take one's guns away, but there should be appropriate due process. And that's where we've had problems in the past when it comes to red flag laws. Some folks want to pass something that doesn't have due process, doesn't allow the other person to express their concerns and opinions when it comes before the court. That's one issue. Clearly, we have some concerns when it comes to how old should you be to own certain types of guns and those type of questions. I think those are suitable for states to discuss and debate what is the appropriate level. But really, one of the concerns I have is too much of what they're talking about at the federal level historically has been let's feel good about certain things, but it doesn't actually address and solve the problems that we're facing.
Yeah, so that's my question to you. Will these address the problem?
At the end of the day, you won't really see. But I clearly have concerns that say, at the federal level, do I want the federal government doling out money to entice states to take certain action that they think is appropriate? No, I don't. I want the states to be highly independent in their choices.
All right, Patrice, we went over some of the main points that this bill will accomplish. Do you see that being effective and making a difference?
Well, some of this is about funding, but it's about funding to enhance our mental health services. It's about funding to help with school safety. I think everyone agrees that those are important things that we do need to handle. And I think it will make a difference. I think this is a great first step. Well, there are a lot of good first steps in this, and I'm pleased that we're making the progress, and I think this will save lives.
Let's talk about how this will be received in Utah. You mentioned, Patrice, that we've come close on these red flag laws, but we also need to point out the person that ran those bills lost in convention this year. So how do you see Utahns holding on to these ideals, and will they be in favor or opposed?
I think most Utahns are going to support these very modest proposals. I think you're going to see Utahns really rallying behind this. This is a compromise bill. It certainly doesn't take an extreme position at all, and I think you're going to find a lot of Utahns really supporting this.
Your thoughts there, John? Again, mentioning Representative Handy, who ran those bills and then ended up losing in convention this year.
Yeah, I think Utahns are going to be very split on this issue. Guns are a major part of people's culture, their life experience. It's a very important issue for them. It's a very passionate issue. I think we all agree when it comes to folks that are criminals, we're concerned about them. But to weigh in and possibly restrict access for law-abiding citizens, that's where Utahns will be especially concerned.
Let's move on to the January 6th hearings. They have been public. We have seen a lot of testimony come out. As of recording, we had seen 2 hearings so far. Patrice, let's start with you on this one. Your assessment from what you've heard. I know it's a lot, but what are some of the main points you're taking from this?
These have been great hearings. I think we've all learned a lot. We've heard from a lot of the people that are in Trump's inner circle, and they all were advising him, with the exception of Giuliani, that he needed to accept the results. Former Attorney General Barr referred to Donald Trump as being detached from reality. So I think that there's been a lot of good testimony about what happened with Vice President Pence, and he at least wanted to call out law enforcement where our president wasn't willing to even do that to protect our Capitol. But these hearings, I think, have been good. 70% of the public said they wanted to have these hearings. They wanted to learn about what happened because people want accountability and they don't want it to happen again.
John, your thoughts on what you've seen come out of these hearings so far?
Well, so far I'd say they're a waste of time. I mean, have we really even learned anything new that we didn't already know in the last year and a half? I haven't seen a single thing that's really come out that's altered the perception of what took place January 6th or the understanding we have since that point. We also had yesterday, the committee basically said, we're not sure if we're actually going to recommend any kind of criminal charges and refer that to anybody, and so there's kind of this, well then, so what? And I think if you step back and you think about Watergate, a lot of people compare it to Watergate. There you had committees really doing the investigative work before the public, and you saw that take place. This committee is much more kind of what folks would describe as the Benghazi committee. There was a certain agenda they're trying to drive. You've already done certain work. You're not really investigating in this fair, impartial perspective, and we haven't learned anything new.
Patrice, address that, because that's what I'm hearing a lot from the Republican side is, look, we're not learning anything new. Your thoughts on what we have heard to this point?
This is a bipartisan committee. Let's make sure we understand that. And I think we are highlighting things that maybe the public did not understand. Certainly there have been some things we've heard before, but this is important information. The information about how the president was getting information from his own inner circle, that there was no fraud, and watching how he just made a fortune of all of his fundraising all over this and the 60 lawsuits. I think we've learned. I think we still have a lot more to learn, and I hope there's accountability, and I know that our Department of Justice is watching this very closely. I think from what Congresswoman Cheney said, there haven't been any decisions yet on what kind of referral there might be, and certainly that's not the only source of a possible indictment.
John, your thoughts on another avenue? Should this be going through another, say the Justice Department or somewhere else, to where there could be potential accountability?
Well, the first thing I want to mention, Glenn, is I think Patrice and I both agree this was a horrendous act that took place on January 6th. So let's not leave any doubt about that. Various folks should be prosecuted because of that. There's other concerns that come into place. But for a guy like me who's an auditor, when I hear a committee that says, okay, we haven't finished our investigation, but we're going to start presenting the findings, to me it's kind of, okay, either do it as part of the investigation or complete the investigation and then present your findings. Don't kind of do this thing half-cocked.
Well, let's talk about potential outcome. Patrice, do you see anything coming from this of substance?
Well, hopefully there will be something. I mean, for one thing, we hope this never happens again. I think John and I both agree on that. And everything they can learn to make sure that something like this never happens again is really important. There may be some accountability on the part of the president. And we're talking about a president who's talking about running for office again. So if there's something he's done that's illegal, that needs to be addressed. So I think this is a very important, these hearings are important, and I'm glad the public is paying attention. Had 20 million viewers on that first night.
All right, John, we have about 30 seconds left. Do you see anything coming of this?
Well, one thing I would hope is Congress fixes the Electoral Count Act. Clearly, that was the vehicle President Trump was trying to drive through. There's a lot of confusion about what's in there. Let's at least fix that.
All right, I wish we could dig into this a little more, but unfortunately I have been given the wrap, so we are going to have to end it on that note. Really important conversation. I appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. The primary election is next week. Early voting is underway this week, but it varies by county. So make sure to check with your local county clerk for the details. Election day is Tuesday, June 28th. Make sure to connect with me on social media or email. I'd like to know what you think of this show or other issues important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.